Let's get serious. Habaki!
What is going on, everybody? NestleOverXLX here, and welcome back to another Call of Duty video. I figured I needed to make one of these because there's some ridiculous shenanigans going on right now when it comes to guns and video games. I haven't actually been making videos, if you've noticed, on the channel about 90% of pretty much anything that has been going on in the world over the last year. There's multiple reasons for that, and I really don't want to get into too many of them, but the basic gist is other political YouTube channels do a better job of covering the stupid shit that the cranky old man in the White House does better than I ever could. And my opinions basically line up with theirs 99% of the time anyway. So there's no point in me making videos on it, but I wanted to make a video on this one because, A, it affects me directly, as with the usual thing. I think the last one I made affected me directly as well. I think I made a video on the transgender military ban. Yes, I think I did make a video on that. If I did, I'll put it in the description, if I did make a video on that. But I wanted to talk about the guns in the video games that seem to be perpetrating themselves in the media right now because our president is a moron. Basically, what's been happening is it's basically the 90s again. If you were alive in the 90s, you'll remember that what Republican lawmakers would always say was that violent video games were a way for anyone, children especially, because the youth will always be corrupted apparently. It is a way for people to become like desensitized to violence. It is a way for people to, become desensitized to guns. They don't get exposed to them properly, and then because they've been exposed to guns improperly, they go out and buy them and shoot up schools because that's how it works, I guess, according to them. And I'm basically going to break down exactly why that argument is bullshit and why it has been proven bullshit time and time again throughout history since basically the 1800s, not with video games of course, but with this, it's the same argument. And what I mean by that is it's the same argument that keeps being made with all forms of media. In the 1800s, it was always the fact that radical books, radical ideas in books would always corrupt the youth and make them do horrible things and make them, rape their mothers or whatever. And so book burning was a thing because book burning was one of the only reasons, or one of the only ways that folks could figure out how to get rid of, books that they didn't like, that had ideas that they figured would corrupt the children. Of course, that never happened. It was basically never a thing that ever actually came to fruition. It moved on into the 1920s with the blues music and jazz music. It's going to corrupt the youth. It was basically associated in the 20s with the flappers and stuff. Redefining femininity and sexuality and basically redefining what it means to be an American rather than the traditional bullshit that the Republicans want to push constantly. And they figured that it would corrupt everybody, and so they wanted to ban jazz and the blues, mainly because the blues was an African American thing, and Republicans are racist. And then it came up again in the 50s when rock and roll was a thing, because rock and roll would corrupt the youth. It's the same argument, etc., etc. And now it's happening again with video games. It's always the same argument, and it always falls flat on its face because it never actually takes into account the fact that the influencers are never the problem. and the actual thing that's perpetrating the crime is always the problem. What I mean by that is the fact that um, if you look at the argument, they're saying violent video games are causing mass shootings, so we need to ban violent video games. Or the fact that the mass shootings really only occur in America. I believe there's like one mass shooting in every other modern nation in the world since like 1800, um, since they banned basically all guns. Um, gun violence is just not a thing. There's like 3 gun deaths in Japan since they banned guns in like the 50s or something. There's been like 3 gun deaths. It's actually really crazy. It's ridiculous. And video games are available worldwide, so it can't be video games. It just can't. Because if video games were the problem, then the 11,000 gun deaths per year that we see in the United States would be shared across every country that had video games. Because that's how variables work. when one variable, the the video games, is influencing everybody across the world, that would mean that everybody across the world would be influenced in the same way to act in the same way, because that's how it works. Um, if if that's not the most simple logic on the face of the planet, I don't know what is. And it once again, it's the same thing with the current um, administration. Is let's come up with some stupid argument that means nothing, essentially, that will never work. Um, but let's get people talking about it just to detract from the actual issue. That's pretty much always what happens every single time anything happens in this administration. It's actually um, quite interesting, but scary at the same time, where we've basically put up this violent video games the problem, where they're clearly not. Because if they were, then these mass shootings would be shared across the entire world, or at least in countries where video games exist, which is most of the entire world. So, England would have ridiculous amounts of mass shootings. Japan would have ridiculous amounts of mass shootings. Um, Japan actually spends more money on video games and has more video game players in Japan than America does. But Japan has like 3 mass shootings a year, or not even mass shootings. I think they have 0 mass shootings a year. They have like 3 gun deaths a year, like total, like 3 deaths by guns in the whole country per year. We have 11,000. So I think the evidence is pretty clear that guns are the issue and they need to be regulated, if not outright banned. I personally believe that the Second Amendment does not guarantee the right to bear arms. Um, but that's not what this video is about. I mean, if you read the wording on the Second Amendment, it does not say that every individual citizen has the right to keep and bear arms. It says in the wording, the ability for a well-regulated militia to keep and bear arms, which back in the day was the people. The people were the militia, but the militia today is the National Guard. So the people do not have the right to keep and bear arms. They just don't. The militia has the right to keep and bear arms, which is the National Guard. So the National Guard has the right to keep and bear arms. The American populace does not have the right to keep and bear arms. I'll use the term. I'll use the phrase that the Republicans use. The Second Amendment is very clear. I've just made it clear for you. You don't get to have guns. Sorry. Um, Anyway, I think that's all I really wanted to say on this. I I am sick and tired of hearing about this narrative being pushed, and I wanted to give my my 2 cents on it. I feel like I should be doing more here on YouTube in the political space, or at least in the opinion space, not in the political space, but in the my opinions on things space. Like I used to. I kind of dropped off for a year, and again, multiple reasons for that, but the main one being channels like the Young Turks and Secular Talk just do a better job, honestly, and anything I can say, they can say better with more production quality and basically the same opinions that I'm going to say anyway. But I'm going to try to do more in the future. So, I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Please be sure to leave a like and be sure to subscribe if you did. And I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.
We have fire superiority. We need reinforcements. Counter-recon aircraft ready for flight. Recon airborne, searching for targets. Have them on the run. Kill them all. Recon flight concluded. Counter-recon aircraft ready for flight. Recon airborne. Enemy spotted in the garage! Counter-recon is airborne. Engaging enemy aircraft. Recon flight concluded. Counter-recon flight concluded. Returning to airfield. Enemy recon aircraft in the air.